Hi, hello again. This video is going to be a bit different because I've got something to disclose basically about my experiences with UFOs and personal experiences that to some people would be really shocking, but they're all good. And it feels like on the world stage things are ramping up to some kind of event, more disclosure. There's already been some disclosure, and they talk about non-human pilots and non-human entities, non-human craft, and so I just wanted to put my experience in the mix, because I think with all of these events that are happening and things that are on the horizon, with all these big world events, there's the potential for certain groups of powerful people to use them to manipulate us into feeling a lot of fear. If you think about the 9/11 event, whether that was real, staged, whether it was, or the COVID thing, whether it was again a man-made thing or not. There are groups, and I'm not talking necessarily about governments, pardon me, I'm talking more about transnational groups of people who are more kind of behind the scenes and are positioned in very, very strategic, powerful places to basically maximize their ability to control and manipulate us. Because let's face it, as a human family, we are in a right mess, and we're very divided in certain areas of the world. We're still prone to war, we're still prone to hatred and fear responses, and that's not, in my opinion, that's not an accident. Anyway, I won't go into all that, and I'm just getting over flu, so please excuse my rough and ready appearance, but I just wanted to help actually, because I've had some personal experiences with, I would call them, I don't know that I'd call them ETs, but unidentified phenomena. Anyway, judge for yourself, but they've all been very uplifting experiences. But there's also a word of caution in with this, because all isn't what it seems necessarily. So I'll just go into it. I'll just go into the background a bit, right? So I'll reverse engineer excuse the pun, what's happened basically. So the most recent experience and the most dramatic one was back in 2021, and it was in my mother's field, right? And there are some very interesting things about this, right, that are very key. It was absolutely so undeniably real that my reaction, my nervous system's reaction, was it was absolute shock and awe and wonder and not disbelief, because that was the shocking thing about it, was that any disbelief that I had up until that point was gone right there and then, because it was so real, so visual, so I didn't feel it, but it was very, very real, and the timing of it, it was more than a coincidence. So I'll explain what it was. So this was in the summer of 2021, and I remember because I had 2 guests staying at that point, and I'd just been on a video call with someone very dear to me, and my energy was really high. I was absolutely buzzing and overflowing with good vibes, and that might be significant. I felt very connected. Anyway, I took my dog out for a walk, and I think it was about 11 at night in the summer, and the weather was absolutely glorious. It was a beautiful, to go out, Tux? It was a beautiful summer's in July, I think it was. Yeah, good boy. And the stars were very, very bright, and it hadn't rained or anything, and it was just gorgeous. I felt really alive, and I was running through the fields, the field with my dog, music on, headphones, and then I just looked up and it was like, wow, and I just wanted to like lie down and gaze up at the stars for a bit. And now, prior to this, I've had some experiences, so I was sending out a message of love, basically, to what I believe are my star family, our star family. But I feel, and I've always felt, that I'm not just from planet Earth. I've always felt like I came to planet Earth on a bit of a mission, and I intuited that when I was about 15, and with tremendous love for our beautiful, beautiful planet Earth. And so I was sending out a message of love, and I was singing, because it was on my headphones as well, Adele's version of Bob Dylan's Make You Feel My Love. Just singing it out. So judge that how you will. And I was, just for the record, I was not on anything mind-altering. I don't really do mind-altering stuff, apart from coffee and the occasional drink. And I was expecting, honestly, a little response, because that's my previous experience. And it's sometimes a shooting star, it's sometimes something that goes past, and almost like an iridium flare, but not. It just kind of glows up and then goes off. And the way it moves and the speed that it moves, because I've researched it, doesn't really tally with an iridium flare, although it could have been, there's a slight possibility. But anyway, I normally, like, when I send out a signal, normally, I don't do it all the time, I get something back. Especially if I do it like a very sort of powerful prayer, like a call, like an ET phone home kind of thing, or as a message of love and gratitude, which is what it was then. And now there's some weird things about this as well, because I had my dog with me, and my dog was just doing his thing. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw like a flash of light, and I spun round. And it's weird because, like, logically you'd think if they were saying hi, it would be in front of me, right? I don't know why it wasn't, I really don't. But I didn't hear anything because I had music on in my headphones, so I don't know if it made any sound at all. But I did see out the corner of my eye, and I spun round to see this most glorious sight, I think, of like a sphere of translucent swirling light, and it was like a swirling mix of orange and white from what I can remember. I have seared this into my memory. And I didn't see a being. It was just like, to me, my brain said plasma. I don't know why. I mean, I'm not a Trekkie, but somewhere in my memory banks was the word plasma, so that's how my brain interpreted it. I don't know if it was plasma or not, but it was like this plasma light ball, and it was absolutely beautiful and stunning, and it was diameter wise, I think it was probably about 2 meters in diameter, and the position of it relative to me was, I don't know, it's probably about 50 yards away or something like that. I'm not very good with numbers and distances and stuff, but anyway, it was basically, it was, and this is another significant and weird thing, it was inside the boundary of my mother's field, but up in the air. So, and I was looking at the hedge. It's funny how you take all this stuff in a split second, really. But afterwards I was sort of measuring it, and I thought, oh, it's like there's the hedge with the trees coming out of the hedge boundary, and then it's like that height again above it. So it was that kind of height, and it zoomed along. It was quite quick. It was only I don't know, a couple of seconds at the most. There wasn't a great stretch of field left at that point, because I was almost in the corner of the field, so it was just like a very small segment of the field. And the other weird thing is, right, so it was just horizontally flying along at quite a speed. I don't know how fast, but when it got to the end of my mum's field, it vanished. And I remember shouting out, like, I could see you, you know, like, it was like, I can really see you. It was like, I almost felt like I was back in some biblical age, you know, where like something that is in the world of like myth or possible imagination or legend actually appears, and you're like, oh my god. And I was just like, I was crying and laughing and saying, was it I actually saw you, or I can actually see you, something like that, because I was actually taking in the fact that it was that real, that now my brain couldn't argue with it, my senses couldn't argue. It had really sort of sunk in, basically. And I think I was up in the field, and I went into the other field at that point. I was just so flipping high on, you know, the vibe, not on anything else, on like just the magic of that. And it felt really good. I didn't feel remotely scared or, you know, like it was up to anything dodgy. Honestly, it felt like it was a flyby, just saying, hi, we're here, you know, like, we love you too, something like that. That's what I sort of sensed in my heart, in my being. And I was up in the field and in the other field for probably like another 2 hours, like just like integrating it, like dancing, singing, laughing, like crying, I think, as well. And when I got home, I remember my family and my lovely friends looking at me as if I was a bit mad. Apart from one friend who was like, whoa, that's really cool. And since then, it's been quite hard actually telling people about it, because there's so much, I suppose, negative programming about it, or there's so much disbelief, or it's such an out there thing that people can't really, they don't really know how to digest it. So a lot of the time it's like, oh, what's that thing called? It's like not disassociation, but cognitive dissonance. It's a bit like that. So it's been quite lonely actually, because you know, you do kind of think, oh, people are going to think I'm losing it. But because there have been quite a lot of people who've also seen things actually, and who've also kept it quiet, I have actually had some amazing conversations. My eldest brother, who's very, very very down to earth and very sort of reductionistic, and you know, only believes what he can experience through his 5 senses. Which, no offense, bro, but you know, there is more out there than what our 5 senses can pick up, and science proves that. But anyway, and he was like, oh, it was military. It was military. Okay, there's a very small, very tiny chance in my mind that it would be military. It's much more logical, actually, to me, that it was something extraterrestrial. Because of course, like if you look at the James Webb Telescope pictures, all those amazing jewels, that's just one segment, tiny segment of our universe. And those jewels, they're not little planets, they're galaxies. We haven't even I don't think we've properly mapped out the entire Milky Way yet. How can we explore even our own galaxy? And with our technology as it is at the moment, because we can't travel beyond the speed of light, and you know, so, and my son feels a bit affronted by this whole this whole issue, because he's like, well, you know, he's into obviously Newtonian physics, and he's studying physics, and I've tried to talk to him about UFOs and things, and he's gradually making the shift to opening his mind as to well, maybe there is more to heaven and earth than you have dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio, as famous poet once said. Playwright, I mean, Shakespeare. But you know, it's unnerving and unsettling to a lot of people, and that's why I think it's such a slow transition, really, because as my son said, that makes everything that we know wrong, which actually it doesn't. It really doesn't. It just means that there's a chunk of it missing, and I'm no physicist actually, so it just means that we've got some things wrong that need to be tweaked, and it's to do with other dimensions, I think. And you know, people say, well, how can any beings travel at the speed of light? We can't travel at the speed of light. You know, it's proven in physics that it's the laws of the universe and they don't change. But what about other dimensions? And it was when this thing appeared, it was it popped into this dimension, and then it popped out again. And we know that neutrinos do that in quantum physics. And again, I'm no physicist, but I've watched a few programs. Neutrinos literally do that. They pop in and out. And actually, these cutting edge physicists, at the Imperial College and stuff in London, the head of the physics department, and I can't remember his name, I remember him saying, the more we learn, the more we realise we don't know. Anyway, that's my lecture over. So I have then, since then, spoken with people, because I go around, I have customers that I go and see to, care for and things, and most of them are retirement age and older. And it's fascinating because in my local town, 3 people independently saw flying saucers back in the Second World War, when there was an army camp in that town, and they had lots of Americans over as well. Don't ask me the exact times and dates and things, but and one lady, she used to work in the local hospital in the next town that you could walk back to at night. So she worked as a cleaner in the hospital, and she'd walk back in the dark at night when she'd finished her shift back to her town over the hill. And she said sometimes she'd just stand and stare and watch the flying saucers. Sometimes there was one, sometimes there were three, and they'd be kind of hovering over this military camp. So that's, and I was like, alrighty, well, I believe you. And then, but you know, no one really kind of took it all that seriously. And then I heard a totally different person from the same town as her say that her own mother, who was a nurse, she saw a flying saucer, and she kept it really quiet because she didn't want to be sent off to the loony bin, until the postman mentioned that he'd seen one as well. And so like, and that was back in the 40s, I think, yeah, the 40s. So what was going on then? Was that our own defense? Well, you could call it the military-industrial complex, or I don't know. Was that our technology? Did we back engineer it, or were we being communicated with? So, and I met someone recently, a lovely guy, and he's in his 70s, I think, and we got talking about, I don't know how you get onto these things, we did anyway, and he said when he was much younger, he was with a friend in his car, giving him a lift, I think, and they saw these lights way up high, in a triangular formation, and he said we pulled the car over, and we just stood there with the car doors open, like just like looking up, you know, like, what is that? And he said they must have been there for like 20 minutes. And the weird thing about it as well was that it was like a triangle, but it kind of like, before it vanished, it went down 2 sizes. It got 2 sizes smaller and then vanished. And he said that was something to do with warp drive. I don't know, it sounds like Star Trek to me, but something to do with warping. But it makes me wonder, you know, we're just the common people, so how many people in all kinds of industries, you know, like we had the naval pilots off the coast of Mexico or something, wasn't it, just last year or the year before, and it all came out that the tic-tac thing, and that was like defying our known laws of physics, and there was the government was saying that they thought it was us in the future, basically. So could tell you more stories like that, and I've had previous experiences with like orbs of light and stuff, but that's the main slice. But the context really is the most important thing, because if any of you have heard of Dr. Stephen Greer and what he calls CE5, which is it's like human initiated contact, then you'll be familiar with, hopefully, with what his angle on it. And apparently he works with lots of psyops and lots of like, I don't know, he's the kind of guy that he's right in there, with like the, not in league with the deep state stuff, but with, he's got connections in so many places to do with all of this, like people, like whistleblowers come to him, and lots of meetings and talks with government officials and Pentagon and God knows what else, right? But I can't personally vouch for this guy. I don't know his real character and everything, but, and with anything like this, I always take a little pinch of salt with it. But his take on it is that, and I kind of do go along with this a bit, that Eisenhower was approached during his presidency, during the time when they started letting atomic bombs off. He was approached, and there were those who, the ETs, if you like, who really wanted to liberate humanity, and then there was a small group of those who didn't. Now, Stephen Greer seems to think that we're the bad guys, that there are no bad ETs. And he said that anything scary that happens in the sky, it's our stuff, basically. Like, we've been reverse engineering stuff for like at least 70 years. And you would not believe the technology that, I keep wanting, like the Pentagon, but the military industrial complex, like Lockheed Martin and all that kind of, they've all been siphoning billions of dollars off from the Pentagon and from various other places, getting funding probably from all kinds of institutions as well, pardon me, for years, to develop the technology to reverse engineer a lot of these crafts. And some of these crafts have crashed, pardon me, some of them have been shot down, apparently, allegedly. I don't know, I wasn't there. But anyway, yeah, he reckons that all ETs are friendly. I'm not entirely singing off the same hymn sheet there. But the thing that I do think I might agree with, and the thing that I would say to be aware of as we step into the next sort of era, even this year, you know, stuff's going to happen, most probably. The thing to be aware of is that there's probably an agenda. The same kind of thing as with COVID, the same kind of thing with 9/11. I'm not saying I know exactly what happened and what the agenda was, but if you look at the consequences of some of this, a lot of our human rights have been eroded, infringed, and there is some kind of ring of truth to that we as humans are being manipulated, kind of brainwashed, kept in a sort of narrow band of consciousness, kept in a sort of state of fear and anxiety, because we're easier, I've always believed this, we're easier to control when we're in fear. You know, when we're in our hearts, when we're in our power, our true power, not ego power, in our connected state, we're not easy to control, because we get it. We get why we're here and, you know, who we are, and we can smell the BS, basically. But at least we can smell. we can feel stuff. We know stuff when we're like that. But when our brain is just running fear programs, it's like it scatters us, basically. So Stephen Greer, let me try and like tie this all together. I'm a bit ADD today. So Stephen Greer is saying that there's been this plan ever since Eisenhower was kind of superseded, shall we say, by a more negatively orientated group. That there's been a plan to kind of unite humanity, which sounds great, against a common enemy, but unite us in a way that actually is kind of like corralling us in a sense, and manipulating us to make very big decisions about our freedom and our need to be protected. You know, like if you look at a lot of wars that have gone on, there's like, oh well, it's because they're weapons of mass destruction, when really it's more about oil, black gold, or whatever. You look at, particularly in the West, if you really look into what we've done and why to other nations, Adam Curtis's what was that film, that documentary film called? Something Spring, can't remember, but Adam Curtis's film anyway about it. There are plenty of other references and plenty of other, I mean, you look at the Roman Empire, it's as old as time, isn't it? We create a reason to go and get what we want and to get the people behind that. And look at Hitler and the propaganda. You know, propaganda is basically the word to sum it all up. So just my cautionary, it's not a cautionary tale, it's just a word of caution that there is going to be an agenda and there is going to be propaganda as this whole thing opens up. And if Stephen Gray is right, and there is technology far beyond our wildest dreams and nightmares that's being weaponized, and you know, it could be that they do create a false flag event, black ops, psyops, whatever it's called, where they stage an alien invasion that then terrifies us little humans, and then makes us much more easy to convince to do certain things that we will then later regret, to do with our human rights, maybe to do with being protected, infringements of all kinds that basically have us eating out of the wrong hands, basically. And we've got AI mixed into that as well. I don't mean to be all doomsday about it, but it's just something to be aware of. And I happen to believe that that was nothing to do with the military that I saw in my mother's field back in the summer of 2021, because it was a response to the love that I put out. And why? And I said this to my brother, why in God's name would the military have any desire to do that to a country bumpkin, a little farm girl in the Shire, who poses no threat to them, is of no interest to them? Like, why would they be trying to convince me that there are beautiful, benevolent beings out there, BBBs I call them, trying to communicate with me or answering me? It doesn't make any sense, bro. It's not to my brain. And it was like immediately after I had put out this loving, connective energy of love and appreciation and gratitude to them. So I would say I'm 99.99% sure it was nothing to do with the military. But Stephen Gray is saying that even orbs and things can be generated. And I guess, you know, we've got hologram technology, lasers. It's possible, isn't it? So I'm going to do another video actually on how I believe we can start to discern, you know, the false from the real. And I do genuinely believe that most of these extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial beings are beautiful and benevolent and part of our very, very ancient family. I think we have, and we will discover more about that as, you know, places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and there's going to be more and more uncovered as to our true cosmic heritage, how we were seeded, you know, the missing piece between ape and Neanderthal and all that kind of thing. And I'm prepared to be very wrong about that, but that's just where I am at the moment with it. I think there's a much bigger story to humanity than we've been led to believe, or we've been allowed to believe. So, but I just wanted to say that because there's a fear agenda. I can feel it, and there usually is with these things. And just to throw my 5 penneth worth in, because there are beautiful, benevolent beings out there, and they want to help us and reunite us and help liberate us from what I think is quite an epic oppression of humanity. We are not being allowed to flower in the way that we should. Anyway, that's another subject, but there might well be some with a more negative, controlling agenda, but are there any more dangerous than the ones in our own world systems right now, who are perpetuating misery and war and suffering and starvation and disease and inequality and inhumanity and cruelty? And yeah, I mean, surely you know, right? You're a human. You can just take a look around. We're a fear-based race at the moment, and as I said before, I don't think that's an accident. So this is the time. I really do think that we are about to be able to take a leap in the right direction. So anyway, it's all going to come to some kind of, it's going to come to a head at some point in, I don't know when, I honestly don't. But so many people that I speak with feel that something is building. But just have your savvy around you when you hear these news headlines and reports and things, and if you are being manipulated into fear, just remember to question it. And also, like, what does it feel in your heart? What is your knowing about it? Because in the knowing, it's like the knowing in our bones. It's weird to think our bones have an intelligence of their own, but sometimes it really just feels like that. In your being, just don't be a fear puppet if you can possibly help it. There's a huge opportunity here for us to evolve and grow, and for human consciousness to flower. And on that lovely note, I'm going to bid you all goodbye, farewell, blessings, and if you've got anything constructive to say, then please add a comment or a link or whatever. All right, take care, human family.